Okay, so I think Fatima and Pushpa, I think we are good to start. Yeah,
Yes, Anu.
thank you. Uh, Folks, welcome everyone for the 12th Calicut Meetup. So this is completely about Cloudhub 2.0, the new deployment model that we have in MuleSoft. And thank you everyone for joining in for this on this Saturday. Actually, on a weekend, it's just very important to us that because you guys are spending time with us on a weekend actually. And since we are in small in number, I believe everyone have the mute and unmute access. Feel free to ask your questions, unmute yourself, ask your questions, and then you can interact with us anytime you feel like. Yep. So we have a couple of organizers. John, unfortunately, he's not here with us now. Um, and Fatima, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Anu. Hi, everyone. Myself, Fatima Farsana. I'm a MuleSoft developer and I have around 4 years of experience. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you. Myself, Anup Ramachandran. I'm working as an integration architect for NJC Labs and also a MuleSoft mentor for some time now. I used to speak in meetups and as well as like to organize meetups as well. So I also worked as a technical instructor for some time, but now currently completely into projects nowadays. That's about me. So I'd like to introduce Push. So much. Thank you so much for joining in this session. I mean, it's very much appreciated. I know you are quite busy in your schedules, and then you took time to actually prepare the slides and then came in for this on time. Yeah. Thank you so much. Can I-
Welcome, Anu.
You'd like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So, hi all. I have 15 years of experience in like complete IT, and it was all together into the different integration tools. And then in MuleSoft, I started working from past 4 years. So currently, I'm working as a senior technical architect in Nagaru.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Pushpa. Just few things about the session today. So as a speaker or as a host, we are not representing any companies here, so that's it's well known for everyone. And it's only for these are only for learning purpose. So any feature, any licensings that Cloud 2.0 models should be taken up with your managers and the business in order to understand the licensing models and all. And this is purely for learning purpose. And we'll be recording this session, so it will be useful for everyone to go back and refer to what we have learned today. And then if you have any questions, please put your questions in chat or feel free to unmute and talk also. So let's make it more interactive. So let's take more information from here. And as always, like feedbacks is one of the important factors that gives us the fuel to run more meetups. So please give your feedbacks whenever possible. Yep, that's it. So with that, I'll hand over to Push. Push, would you like to? I'll stop sharing. You can start sharing. Thank you.
So, hope my presentation is visible to everyone.
Yes, yeah.
Mm,
Yep. If you want to have it slideshow, that's a button. The other one, the first one.
the first one. This
Uh,
is the one, right? Normal.
yeah, not that. If you go to that right hand side, near to that button. Yeah, next one. Next to that. Next to that. Yeah, that one.
This will keep on. I hope it will not shuffle, right?
Uh, You
Okay,
can click on
probably
next.
once. Okay, okay. I thought why I was not switching on this mode. I thought like probably it will keep on after certain minutes it will go on to the second page. Yeah. So hi all, as you know that basically I will be describing here what is Cloudhub 2.0. So most of us we have worked in Cloudhub 1.0, and now this is something Cloudhub 2.0 has been introduced newly. So as we have covered here, basically the first point which you can see that it's actually a Kubernetes based architecture. So if you'll see the RTF component of the MuleSoft, that is also on a similar concept. Similar way, CloudHub 2.0 is also on a Kubernetes based architecture. So, even when, basically, I will show you the service also once it is getting deployed. Then how it will keep on showing you it is trying to create a container, and then in that container only that particular application will be deployed. So this is what we are trying to make it out. In every application is deployed in the lightweight container, so it can be easily scaled up and down. So this is what the architecture of basically. And then we have basically when we used to have a Cloudhub 1.0, we used to have a load balancer, dedicated load balancer. Now Cloudhub 2.0 comes with the ingress load balancer. So basically what happens like ingress load balancer will automatically generate like a public and a private endpoint URL for you, and then it completely depends on you whether you want to keep it on a private or whether you want to keep it like expose it to the outside network. So that also we will cover it when we are creating a private space, that what is ingress load balancer. Then you have the option of to configure the inbound and outbound firewall. Definitely, when I'm showing a demo of how to create a private space, you will be able to see there is one tab which is created, and in that basically you can create a inbound and outbound firewall rule. So inbound firewall rule is basically you are defining an IP list. You are basically whitelisting the IP at your end, that what all basically the components or the what all the callers they can call you and they can trigger your basically the mule cloud hub structure. So this is what we will be doing in the inbound firewall rule, and the outbound firewall rule is basically where the mule can send a request outside. So generally, we are not bothered about where mule is going to create a connection, but yeah, definitely inbound firewall rule is something that we have to take care of when we are actually, you can say that when you are configuring in your project. So then we have a more granular resource capacity. You would have seen that if you go for the ch 1.0, then you have you can't see this 0.5, 1.5, 2.5, and 3.5 like that. Okay, so these kind of basically you have the granularity level of availability of the vCore, which is like they have jot down into the Cloudhub 2.0. Then we can come here basically we have this architecture where what is that here our integration apps, basically your applications which you have created, then this is deployed in your Cloudhub 2.0. And then you have this is the platform service REST API, and the other thing like object store, anypoint monitoring, logs, alerts, and the private space replica management and schedule management which you are taking care inside this. Then you have a runtime manager where basically you will be having a communication happening. So uh, I'll come here. Basically, I will cover all these in the practical scenario also. So, most probably these all slides again I will be covering it. That what all things I'm covering over here, but I'm just giving an overview on the slide as of now. So, if you come here, then you can see that replicas are dedicated instance of the Mule runtime engine that run your integration application on Cloudhub 2.0. So basically, the vCore size, if you can see the downside, the chart which we have. So let's say if I am selecting a granularity level of 0.1, then this is what the memory will be allocated, and the heap memory is basically allocated to you and the storage allocated to you. So this is what we have covered here. Like basically what will be the capacity, what is the isolation, what is the manageability, and what is the locality. Okay, so basically in the locality, you can see that each replica runs in the specific global regions such as US, and then you have a dedicated to Europe region, and you have an Asia Pacific region. So here, the last point which you can say that you can scale replicas vertically by selecting one of the available vCore size. So when you are so you know that what is the horizontal like basically scaling into the MuleSoft and what is the vertical scaling in the MuleSoft, right? When you are adjusting your vcore size, that terms as an vertical scaling. When you are adjusting in terms of the replica, that would be known as an your you can say that it is basically your horizontal scalability. So this is what you can see in the last line, which is mentioned as you can scale replicas vertically by selecting one of the available vcode size. Then you have the Cloudhub 2.0 overview where we have an availability and the scalability. So again, this slide also like basically as we all will be aware, 2.0 also like basically support the functionality of, you would have seen that we have a zero downtime deployment. So let's say when you are doing a downtime, like basically when you are deploying your services, it will not be, there won't be any downtime, like which will be, you will be able to see into the on-prem server, right? Where we declare to the client that this will, time zone would be for the downtime which we will be doing it. But here what will happen until like until and unless your new application is getting deployed, by that time what happened, like your the previous application on top of which you are overriding your deployment will keep on working. So this is what you have a zero downtime.
Okay.
So basically, these all are the theoretical concept. Like basically, you can go through it, and you have any sort of like basically like a question in it, then I can actually cover it. So the same one, it is having the redundant platform, then it is having an intelligent healing, then it is having a zero downtime updates, which I already covered a lot. Then in Cloudhub 2.0 feature, we have two kind of things. One is like you can create a shared space and you can create a private space. So basically that completely depends on your client requirement, that whether they like, or it can be your suggestion also to the client. If their services are like basically they can share the say shared space, which will be shared via the multiple other organization also. And then they can have a private space establishment also, where like basically you can I can say that it would be private to your network. So, like only your business organization would be working on it. So, this is what we have given the like basically the pointers when to use a shared space. So, you can see that you don't have a requirement to use a vanity domain. So, basically, specific to your business domain, and you can continue to use the cloudup.io. You are not required to use the custom certificate. Let's say when you have a shared space, you don't want to, like you can't install your own custom certificates, whereas in the private space, which is specific to your business domain, you can actually install the certificate over there. So custom certificate, as you already would be aware, that that is basically a domain name for your services API which you are exposing to your client. So then you don't want to access the resources, services, or the database located in the on-premise data center or the private or the public cloud. So basically, you are just trying to jot out that if your client is having certain database, or like basically they are having certain in-house data centers from where you are fetching the cloud, if, basically you are fetching the data. So we have to be very careful while suggesting them this shared space uses, because ultimately you are going and you are actually basically like hitting to the servers which is actually located into their offices, right? Or it can be the rented space somewhere, like basically they would have taken a dedicated rack space over there in the AWS or over there in the Azure premises. Then you have, yeah, so then you have a requirement of running the application in isolation from the public cloud. So basically, again, the fourth point is covering it a lot, like what kind of business user you are actually dealing with, and what kind of applications you are designing it. Definitely, you can't suggest the shared space for your like basically the banking domain. So this is all particularly depends on what kind of domain you are working, what kind of security they needed. Based on that, we can actually suggest our customer to go for the shared space. When not to use a shared space, then you can say that this is again the similar pointers what you have like covered over here on the top. You want to run your application in the single tenant environment or in the isolated mode. Like definitely we have a BFSI domain, or we have some other domain like insurance domain, where you have a customer data. Basically you are dealing with the PII data, like personal identification information. So that is something is like you want to run that definitely into the isolated mode, and then you are required to use the vanity domains. So similar altogether to the points which we have covered on the top is written over here. So you need a custom certificates, like you don't want to use the default the cloudhub.io certificate which is provided via your like MuleSoft, and you want to have your own custom domain, so you want to have your own TLS certification over there, or you need a private endpoints. When you are going for a share endpoint, you can say that share space deployment, you won't have a facility of getting generated of the private endpoint. As I told, when we are creating a private space and when we are deploying any of the services over there, you will be having a two endpoint generated. One will be the public endpoint and one would be the private endpoint. So generally what happened that, let's say if I have a communication from my experience API to process API. So process API, definitely I don't want to expose it to the outside world. So I have exposed my experience API over there. So what I can do, from experience to process, I can have my interaction on the private endpoint, and we can delete the public endpoint of those process API. And but we can keep remain that like you can say that experience API public endpoint, so that like your caller can actually hit the public endpoint which is assigned over there in the experience API. Then they are talking about you need to connect to the resource, services, or the database located in the on-premise data center, which we already covered. So now we'll come to the private space. So a private space is a virtual private and the logical space in the Cloudhub 2.0 in which you run your apps. So you can create a multiple private space up to 100. So that typically depends on your license. So your license would be justifying that how many spaces you can create. So sometimes your client would be having a two private space, like basically creation of that, or they might be, but you have a facility of up to 100. This is what they have tried to, and either into the same or the different reason. So once we are creating a private space, it will give you the facility of selecting your reason, that where you want to basically deploy your private space. So basically it can be your Europe region, if you can select the US region. It's a similar way what we used to do in the Cloudhub 1.0 when we are deploying a deployment. So we will be selecting a region, right? Similar way, when you are creating a private space, you can select your region. So then in each private space, you define a private network, which is a virtual cloud where the apps deployed to its private space run. So basically, it's a kind of virtual cloud which is created specifically for your client, where you can run your apps, then one or more connection from the private network to your external network, either via AnyPoint VPN or a transit gateway. So basically, we have a facility of again creating a VPN and the transit gateway. So basically, these all two things are useful when you are trying to connect with the on-prem data centers. Like basically, let's say your client might can have like their own databases, like which is installed at their end. So so there can be like they can expose you the gateway which you can call directly, or probably you have to do the VPN setup over there, or might be you can have a transit gateway. So it's completely depends on your client, that how what kind of expose he is giving to you. Then you have a TLS context. Similar way, you can have your own custom domain over there while deploying to the private space. Then firewall rules to allow and block the inbound and outbound traffic to your private space. The environments and the business group to allow the deploy to the private space. So you can even select the environment and the business group also over there. When to use a private space? So basically, you want to connect one or the more resources, services, or the database, which is located into your on-premise data center, or it can be, as I already said, that private or the public cloud. Probably they would have been taken a rented space over there in the AWS regions. Might be they would have taken a rented space over the Azure. So this is what, and it can be like a dedicated instance they would have taken, or probably they would have taken a subscription of the public cloud. So infrastructure is not maintained at their end. So this is what they are trying to make out over here. Then you can use the Anypoint VPN or the transit gateway. However, there is no support for the AWS Direct Connect and the VPC pairing. As you would have seen that in the Cloudhub 1.0, we have the facility of AWS Direct Connect and the VPC pairing over there. Then you want to enable the private endpoints to accept the traffic from the private locations. So basically, as I already told, basically when we are creating a private space, you will be giving a CIDR ranges for your private space. So that also, like, probably what you can do, you can give that private list to basically the white list at some their on-prem center. So might be there can be certain API which is deployed onto the on-premise of the client, and they want to invoke your Cloud Hub, and you don't want to expose your public endpoint. You want to be on a private endpoint, but to access that private endpoint, your CIDR ranges should be whitelisted over there. So this is what they are talking about. Okay, basically you want to enable the private endpoints to accept the traffic from the private locations. You want to configure the custom certificates and your own vanity domains. You want to configure the inbound as well as the outbound firewall rules. Then again, here we are talking about like Cloudhub 1.0 ran application on the VM called the workers, and Cloudhub 2.0 workers is replaced with the terms of the replicas. Now you have a sizing option of 0.155, 0.5, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5 granularity level is given over here. So like you can see here, like in Cloudhub, when we Cloudhub 1.0, we used to have a 0.2 to 1 vCore, we used to directly jump. But they have given you this 0.5 vCore over there. And then you used to have a 1 vCore and the 2 vCore, and then you have a facility of here 1.5 and 2.5 vCore also. Then the points come about the cluster. So basically, cluster is a virtual server composed of the multiple nodes, mule runtime engines. The nodes in the cluster communicate on the shared information through a distributed shared memory grid. So as I already said, replicas comes like basically in Cloudhub 1.0 also you would have been like selecting the high availability over there in the production when you are exposing those to your like basically when you are setting up that environment for your client. Similar way here also you have a replicas. So replicas, like let's say if you are selecting a two replicas, so when you are not selecting a checkbox of like basically run in the cluster mode, it will behave in a similar manner as you were having in the Cloudhub 1.0. Like basically one server is active, let's say when one server is down. So basically it will work as an active passive mode. So as soon as one server is down, your second server will start like receiving a traffic. So now because you are running into the cluster mode over here, so now both the server they will balance the load together. So you have that facility available in the Cloudhub 2.0 as well. So you can say that cluster provides the scalability, workload distribution, and added reliability to your application on Cloudhub 2.0. Okay, and then you can enable the clustering feature on per application basis using the Anypoint Runtime Manager console. So basically, clustering requires a kind of like the subscription which is required for is the Platinum or the Titanium, a Cloud Hub Enterprise or the partner account type that enables you to use this feature. Then we have other facility like when you would have done the deployment over there in the Cloudhub 1.0 and you have certain information like you want to store your key inside the properties which you can see over here, then you have to hide those into the secure properties and then you will be keeping that as a part of the mule artifact.json file, right? Then only it will show you the dot 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 over here. But here in the 2.0 you need not to do any such kind of provision. Here you have an option of like when you are typing something, when then you can click on these three eclipses and then you can basically select it as a protected value, and this is how it would be protected value over there. You need not to keep all these value into the MuleSoft artifact.json to hide those values. So I think I am speaking a lot. Any question till now up to this slide? Then we can cover it and then I will move further.
There are no questions posted. I think probably while we have the demo, then we'll be
Might
having
be
more.
there will be. Yeah. So then we have a anypoint platform changes where the deployment model. So there is a change in how you need to deploy the apps to Cloudhub 2.0. As part of the life cycle, you need to deploy your app to Exchange before deploying it to your Cloudhub shared or the private space. So basically, what happens like though this statement is written over there, but still, as soon as we start deploying the services onto the runtime environment, it will parallelly like basically push your application into Exchange also. Okay, so Cloudhub V2 uses a Kubernetes based architecture under the hood, and the deployment lifecycle is the same used by the runtime fabric. So runtime fabric, which is we already know, it's a like basically RTF component of like the provided by MuleSoft. Then definitely we have like deployment models, which is like your rolling update and your recreated deployment basically. So when a deployment is triggered, a new pod is created and both the new and the previous one runs in the parallel until the deployment is completed, after which the previous pod is deleted. So as I already told you, as soon as we are deploying our service, it will start creating a container. So in the rolling update, what they are trying to say that when your deployment is triggered, a new container will be created, and both the new and the previous one runs in the parallel. So your previous container, your previous application is not deleted yet. So your new application would be start on deployment. Once your new start deployment is completed, then only your previous container would be deleted. And when a deployment, then we have a recreate deployment. When a deployment is triggered, the previous pod is recreated by first stopping the pod and then running with the newer version. So basically what happens, like when we have selected this, this is also one of the checkbox available when you are deploying your application. So you can have like, you can recreate the deployment. When a deployment is triggered, the previous pod is recreated. So it will first, so basically you can say that it is not your, some downtime you will be expecting it, because now it is first stopping your service and then afterwards it is running the newer version on the same pod. Then you have an additional resource. Since a temporary pod is created, additional vCore are required, otherwise the deployment is failed. Okay, similar way, no additional resources are required. So basically what happened, uh, so it will be basically, let's say what happens, like you have already consumed the capacity of the vCore into your project. And now you are doing a rolling update and you have exhausted all the vCore which is available in your system. So what happens, like it won't allow you to do the rolling update until and unless you have at least zero point 0.1 vCore as in free, or probably the zero point 0.2 vCore, whatever you have selected when you have deployed that application is free for that like basically application to use it. It will keep on failing because vCore availability is not there. So that is also something we have to take care when we are designing our vCore. Then you have a zero downtime. Basically, when you have a rolling update, there you can have a zero downtime, and recreate deployment is basically you are having some downtime because it's actually stopping the service and then it's running the newer version. Then you have a redeployment. Redeployment is comparatively slower, and here the redeployment is faster. Yeah, so then you have other changes. You can download the load balancer logs, support for the outbound firewall rules, and then basically you are having the inbound firewall rule over there in the 1.0 also, but here you can actually control your outbound traffic rule as well. Visibility into object store, allowing a user to both view and delete the keys to create the clean slats for the testing and the retesting. And then restart option for an application is removed. We now have a start and stop option only. Application, so restart basically like when you are deployed the application, there you would be having a button over there, right? So you can feel that change over there. Then you have application if not running but deployed on Cloudhub 2.0 still consumes the vCore license. To free up the vCore, applications need to be deleted, as I have already covered in the previous slide. Then application size limit for uploading and deploying the apps throughout the runtime manager UI has increased to 350 MB. Get from sandbox feature while deploying an application is removed. Disable Cloudhub logs checkbox from the runtime manager is removed. Because earlier, as you know that like we used to have this disable Cloudhub logs checkbox over there when we were like basically deploying our application, and we want to feed our log into like somewhere into the Kibana dashboard and like onto the some other dashboard like which client wants to use it for the transaction purpose. So then we used to have this checkbox mandatory, which we used to get it enabled via the support, but this support has been ended into the Cloudhub 2.0. So, and definitely you don't need it also in the Cloudhub 2.0. So you have a different mechanism of like feeding a log into the some other server. Then you have a improvements over the Cloudhub 1.0, basically, which I again told the outbound firewall rule configuration. Then you have an ingress self-service logs. Then you have an Amazon Web Service roles for the resource and the access control. Deploying application to the shared spaces, which do not require advanced setup or the infrastructure maintenance. You can enable the clustering features on per application basis using the Anypoint Runtime Manager console when either deploying a new application or deploying an existing application. With the added fractional vCore offering in Cloudhub 2.0, you may no longer need to bundle the multiple listener in the same application to reduce your resources uses. And in Cloudhub 2.0, private space function has improved. VPCs from the Cloudhub 1.0, you can automatically assign a private network for the application in a private space. So, like these all points that I have already covered, like in the earlier slides also. So, if you can see again, the same point is written, which is public and private endpoint of the by default. You can make in place edits and updates to the TLS context and the trust restore of the ingress layer.
Yeah. There is one question from Pradeep.
Mhm.
It says that does the ingress load balancer support layer 7 capabilities?
Pardon?
Does the ingress load balancer support layer 7 capabilities?
Layer
Uh,
7 capabilities is
yeah, so it's
mhm.
basically the load balancer capabilities as such.
Mhm.
So, Pradeep, like to answer your question, now when you are deploying an application to RTF in a self-managed Kubernetes, then you could create a load balancer, ingress load balancer, ingress.class, a specific ingress.class, where you can set up that layer 7 capabilities, but there is no
I think
document that is written that Cloudhub interest load balancer support it. But I can check that for you. But there is no
even
clear
I
doc.
also, yeah,
Yeah.
because there is no clear doc on it. Just give me a moment.
So I was just looking into that documentation. So there is no clear documentation, and I don't think MuleSoft will is going to expose that level of detail under the hood for CloudUp 2.0 at least, because as far as CloudUp 2.0 is concerned, we don't even know that. I mean, the expectation is we don't need to even know that it is using Kubernetes under the hood. So because that's what it is for deploying the applications and all. Yeah. But I have shared you a document. I think that will be helpful. Yep. Thanks, Wish. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I will start now. Yeah. So basically, then in the second slide that is mentioned that CloudUp 1.0 application name has to be unique per control plane. In CloudUp 2.0, application name must be unique per private space. Okay, then you have a custom log4j.xml is supported by default to enable the streaming logs to external log collector. As I said to you that like basically we used to have this log4j.xml like where we will be doing some changes, right? So that this disable option like which was there in the earlier slide, so can be like basically it was, yeah. So we have to externally raise and request to disable the Cloudhub logs over there. But in 2.0, you can actually directly. So that's why they are saying that custom log4j.xml is supported by default to enable the streaming logs to external log collectors. So you no longer need to contact the support to enable or disable this feature. Okay. So you can disable the log streaming using the runtime manager. You no longer need to contact the support to enable or disable this feature. So this is the same point what we have written on the above. Then self-service logs for the dedicated load balancer and the ingress are available via the private space. Titanium users can also download the logs through Anypoint monitoring as well. Using a port 80 and 443 application inside the private space can communicate using the internal load balancer via the private endpoint. So which is already I told you that when your caller is calling your application, the outside caller, then they will be actually the request will be falling into the ingress load balancer. Then from ingress load balancer, when you will go for the private endpoint, like basically when the private endpoint got attached with your application, so what happened, it will create a like basically hyphen internal on top of that. So like whatever the ingress load balancer URL is there, and then you will be having an hyphen internal URL over there. So this is what those private endpoints will be handled via the internal load balancer, not the ingress load balancer.
Okay.
So probably I can then, I will stop sharing my screen.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for one sample application. Just give me a moment.
Um, Meanwhile, guys, like I would like to add a few more points to what Pushpa told with Cloudhub 2.0. So, if you are planning to deploy applications to Cloudhub 2.0 and you're going to create a private space and then you're going to deploy application to that private space, so please be aware that
Yes.
the functional monitoring capabilities you will not be able to access any health check endpoints from your functional monitoring. Okay, so that capability is not available for Cloud 2.0 yet. So if your health check endpoint should be exposed, uh, I mean, it needs to be exposed publicly. Only then your functional monitoring can work.
Just trying to see if I have any sample application available.
Okay.
A quick question in the meantime.
Just, yeah.
The last point that you mentioned, the traffics will be handled by an internal load balancer along with an ingress. Do you mean that we should have two load balancers? I mean, which means along with an ingress, do we need to have another load balancer? Can you elaborate a bit?
Uh, that is a default this MuleSoft SaaS product functionality where which I told you, the front facing is your ingress load balancer where the traffic would be received from outside world. And then afterwards, let's say you don't want to make your like service to be available to the outside world, definitely you will be going for a private URL. So that private URL will be having only a difference of whatever the URL is generated as a public, it will be generated with the hyphen internal. So once I'm deploying the service, you would be able to see that what I'm trying to make out from that. So the thing what happens like that would be like basically the ingress load balancer role has been ended up as soon as it has received the request. But now let's say you have a two process API. So from experience to like basically you are calling your private endpoint. So then that private endpoint will be handled via the internal load balancer, which will be which come into the picture that you are actually dealing with the private load balancer now. So like basically the private endpoint now. So then you can say that you have two process API, and those both are communicating. They are deploying in the Cloudhub 2.0, and they both are interacting with each other. And then you have given into your property file their internal URL only instead of having that. And I have deleted that. So that would be like basically none of the outside world people they can actually hit your URL because that would be publicly residing in your you can say that inside your private space network only. So none of the outside entity can hit it. So here the internal load balancer like role come into the picture.
Okay, so
It's taking time.
it-
Yeah.
yeah, so it's an out of the box solution that when you refer to an internal load balancer, it's an out of the box solution with the Cloud Up 2.0. So you, because if in a Cloud Up
Yes.
1.0, then you need to configure, or I think you have to purchase the load balancer.
Dedicated load balance.
Yeah,
Yes.
purchase that explicitly, but then with the Cloudhub 2.0 you just have to configure an ingress. But the second load balancer that you're talking about is out of the box solution. You don't need to purchase another load balancer. Is that my understanding correct?
Yeah, that's
Yes,
right.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
You don't have to purchase
Uh,
a external load balancer for Cloudhub 2.0. It's all available.
Okay, thank you.
Somehow my studio is not responding to me. Uh, uh, Anup, do you have by any chance any kind of one second, let me see if I have any project in the workspace. I can show that
Yeah.
as okay. Okay, I have one project in the workspace. I will show you the deployment of that. Okay, let me share my screen again. Just do let me know if you are able to see the AnyPoint platform.
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay. So what I was telling to you that once you will go here in the runtime manager, then you have this private spaces. And I was telling you that the private spaces also you have a entitlement available based on your license. So how we can check that? If you go to the access management, inside the subscription you have a runtime manager. So you can see here.
Yeah. Currently,
I think
this is
let
a
me
trial.
try.
Yeah, trial license, right? We don't have access to private space. It's a trial license.
So we will be, but yesterday when I clicked on that, so I remember that it was showing me the fail while
Yeah,
let me see.
it should fail because we
So
don't
if
have
I'm
any notifications.
okay,
Oh,
at least like you can see here, basically what we does, we create a private space. Okay, then we create probably while creating a private network, it will definitely fail, but at least you will get a gist of. So as you can see, it is not aligned to select.
yeah, it's not
Okay.
select. Maybe you can provide
Yeah.
us CIDA block and then try creating.
Yeah. So here, when you are selecting this create private network, right? So once you have actually created a private space, inside that you have to mandatorily create a private network where you will be giving a name. Then this drop down, you can actually select it. You can see the default is the US East Ohio, right? Similarly, you can select any region. Give a CIDR block of that. Creating it will you will be clicking on create.
I can provide by 22.
I will take the default. I will take the default only.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can see that error.
But anyway, at least we got the gist what we can show here. So you will be able to see it will actually create your reason. Then you have a CIDR ranges. So this is what I was about to mean that when you want to have a private communication to any of the, so you can remove your public and actually give this CIDR to whitelist at the end. Okay. So because this has your end, then you have target and the private DNS target. This is generated. So right now you can see that this is .cloudup.io. Similar way, the private DNS target will be generated as an after E2, it would be hyphen internal .cloudup.io. That is the Then you will be having inbound static IP. You will be allocated with the static IPs by default, and you will be allocated with the 3 outbound static IPs by default, which will be decided at random when you are creating your network. Because as right now we were able to fail, like this got failed, we are not able to create it, but this is how this particular thing will look like to you. Then here you have a connection where you can create your VPN connection, or you want to have a transit gateway. So whatever required details are there, that you have to provide it over here for like connecting with your any on-prem server. Now I will come to this tab. So basically what happens, like when your domain is created, so you would have seen here the domain name is by default having .cloudhub.io. So by default you will get one certificate provided via MuleSoft, which will be maintained via MuleSoft only. That would be listed over here. You can see here a default TLX context will be shown here after a private network is created. So that is a default TLX context provided via the MuleSoft. So that is basically MuleSoft will only take care of expiry of the TLX context. Once it is expired, they will keep on renewing it. And as per my knowledge, it is every 45 days, but still I need to confirm it. This is what I know. But the default TLS context, like every 45 days, they will keep on renewing it. But I'm not sure on the number of days, but this is what I am having an assumption. And when I was working for my current client, this is what we got to know from the support. Okay, so but this way you will be able to see only once you are able to create a private network. So basically, which got failed because of like we have not any like VPN assigned over here. So then you can have your own create TLS context also. Like basically, you don't want to go .cloudhub.io. You want to have your own. So basically, then you can set it up over here as well. So you can create your own TLS context, but that is up to your risk that you have to maintain it. So basically your organization have to keep on maintaining. So is this purely your organization call that they want to go via the like basically maintain via the one which is provided by the MuleSoft, or which is they want to have their own domain name. So you guys are aware what is like basically this domain name, right? So whatever we are seeing over here, that is your domain name only. So there would be like this, we can customize as per our need. So basically, when we are basically installing the TLS certificate, this name should be appeared over here. Then you have a you can see here by default you will be having this HTTP anywhere rule would be enabled, but definitely generally when we are we'll be removing these like basically the firewall rules, and we will be whitelisting the IP over here which you want to communicate. So you have an HTTP, you have an HTTPS protocol, you have an TCP protocol. So it depends on like you want to have a port within this range, you are actually interacting with it, then you can go for a TCP, and then otherwise you can have an HTTP and HTTPS communication. So this traffic rule is something which is like we need to control it. Then you have an environment which you can actually control over here. And one section you have certain settings like when your like basically read response time should be, and then as we already told, right, that ingress load balancer logs can be downloaded. So that would, and we were talking about this AWS service role, so that is also something we can enable it from here. Now when you are deploying an application, let's say you have created a private space. So you can see here you have a shared space which you can select it, and then your private space would be listed over here in the downside. So this will go to your Cloudhub 1.0, but this is how it got listed over here. Your private space also, it's like a different machine will be listed over here to you, and then like you will be deploying your application. Then I will tell you that where the URL would be generated. This is the property section which I was telling about that right now we will have a shared space, and I'll show you. So you can see here the replica count. Basically, you can actually select it from here and whatever. And then you have a deployment model, rolling update or the recreate. And then I was talking about this checkbox. Let me do. So as you can see, this checkbox is automatically because 4.5.0 is rollout, so it has automatically taken that. And then here in the ingress, you can see here the public endpoint, and you would be having a private endpoint over here. This endpoint can be reached via the public internet available domains comes from. So once this services is deployed, right, then here you will be having one option of, do you want to have an endpoint of the private endpoint? So click here. So that click here button would be enabled for you at this place, and you have to just click on it and you will be able to get the private URL. Let's say you don't want to use your public URL, you don't want to expose it, you can actually delete it from here. Just a cross statement would be there against your URL, you delete it, then the whole communication will happen via your you can say that private network. Then you can see here this last mile security checkbox is there. Okay, this last mile security checkbox is what happens like when you are exposing your URL as an HTTPS. So then your caller is interacting with your ingress load balancer. So this private space, TLS domain, whatever context you are selecting it, you will be having an interaction based on the SSL based over there. But from ingress to your Mule app, the communication will happen on the HTTP. But let's say that communication also you want to keep it on a SSL base, like you should have a handshake from ingress load balancer to your Mule app. Then you have this last mile security, like basically you have to check. This checkbox will come into the picture on that. So you have to check this. Then afterwards you can actually configure like basically the certificate at your Mule app level, and then this is how the ingress to Mule your handshake will be happening. So this is why this checkbox they have introduced, just to have the interaction from the ingress to your Mule app. So it completely depends on your client if they want to maintain that application level handshake also on the HTTP. But anyways, what MuleSoft claimed it, once your request has been reached to the ingress load balancer, your all communication, because you are already into the private space. So when you are into the shared space, might be that can be actually useful for you. But still, when you are having a private space, you are having your own private network. So you can have the same, like basically the interaction will be happening a private container. So you need not to worry about for the intruder attacks on it. So if you are not using this, then also it will work. But still, if you want to have a use of it, then definitely you have to use this particular property. Now into the property section, when you will see, like let's say I'm doing this key, I'm having 1 2 3. So you can see here the protect is enabled. As soon as you are clicking into it, it will tell you that protected values cannot be viewed or retrieved by any user. This action cannot be done. So let's say if you want to change anything, then definitely you have to like basically replace the protected value. Once you are doing it, you are giving the key and you are giving the new value. So basically you can't retrieve the value from here now. So that is what the purpose is to tell. And the logging tab is again the similar like what you used to have in the Cloudhub 1.0. We have a similar provision over there. So any doubt till now in this screen?
No, I think we don't have any questions here. Folks, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute and ask. I think we can move forward.
uh, I think that is all I have for the private like basically Cloudhub 2.0. So any query if you guys are having, or so then we can probably cover it.
Yeah. So you want to show deploying this application and then exchange, how the exchange data gets published. You want an API.
Yeah. So that's what. So when we are deploying an application, look like which I told already, so you will be able. It will parallelly, like basically, fetch into the exchange also, because we don't have a space over here. So one
So do you want
second.
me to deploy an application?
Yeah, if you have, then probably shared space. We can show it over there.
Uh,
Any Hello World application would work. Okay, I think it opened for me. Earlier it was not opening. Okay, one second, I'll do quickly. I don't know, it's getting hang like anything for me.
okay. I guess I can.
Any simple Hello World service will work for us.
Yeah. Let me actually try and deploy it. Uh, give me a second, guys. I'm just deploying it.
Yeah, sure. I think my system also started working. I'm
Yeah.
also parallel doing that.
Yeah, I'm just I've done deploying. It's deploying it for me. You should now see that. Refresh your screen.
Okay. So you have done in inside the sandbox? Okay.
Yeah, so it's deploying.
So as you can see here, it will start showing you that it is creating a pod, or then these many are applicable and all. I think private endpoint, then also they will not be able to see here. Yeah. If you could see, this public endpoint is generated, but in shared space, you won't be able to see the like private endpoint. So as I already told, the private endpoint would be having a click here link over here, and then you can actually click on that, and you will be getting the private URL. So basically, private URL is nothing. What happens like, after this random number before dot, it will have hyphen internal. That's it. This is how it differentiate in between your private and the public URL.
Yeah, and yeah, if we go to the exchange and then if we go and see
Still,
the
it is running
type,
still. Yeah. So
I
you
mean,
can see here, even you can keep on getting these messages like, it is having this Kubernetes container and all. Yeah, so
Yep, you can see that server
so
info.
as I yeah, so as you all as I already told that once you are deploying your application, then in 2.0, it will automatically like start publishing to Exchange also. So this is how it works.
Yeah. So it's a critical change from Cloudhub 1.0. In Cloudhub 1.0, there is no version management. When you deploy an application, the last jar file will be stored inside the runtime manager itself, and then when the worker is down or a worker is, I mean, whenever a worker wants to start it automatically, it will take the jar from the runtime manager itself. But in case of Cloudhub 2.0 and RTF, whenever you deploy an application, a application will be deployed to the Cloud 2.0. I mean, application will be also published to the exchange, and exchange, it will store the jars in exchange, and you can actually store different versions of jars inside the exchange if you version it out. So if you want to move to a previous version of jar, you could actually do that from the exchange itself. So if you publish an asset to the exchange, but you cannot do that in Cloud 1.0. Yeah, thanks for sure.
Any other question you guys have, so then you can actually clarify now itself.
Then, Anup, I have a quick question on the last statement that you said. So we can have multiple jars in an exchange. Let's say we have three versions published to an exchange, and the application is running with the third version. And if I want to go back to the second version by
Hmm.
changing the current version in the exchange, will automatically reflect the application version, or how does it work? Or do we need to redeploy the application?
No, yeah, you have to redeploy the application, and but there is an option when you deploy it. Um, could you able to um,
Sorry,
show?
can you?
Yeah, could you able to show the exchange? I mean, the runtime manager part. Yeah, can you click
Mhm.
on that? Deploy.
This one,
Yeah, yeah.
application.
Yes, yes, application. And if you go to the settings, yeah, no need of settings. Here you have choose file. Can you click on choose file? Yeah, so there is an option to where you can import the file from Exchange. So if you click on, let's click on import file from Exchange. So here you will be able to select the whatever version it is. So you'll be able to select a previous version of asset and then uh, deploy it.
Perfect. Thanks.
Makes sense? Yeah. Okay. So that's it. Is there any other questions? Okay. Okay. I think we are good. I'll, good. So Venkatesh, so there is Venkatesh had a question. There is no rollback option available, right? Uh, what do you mean? It has. Yeah, it has to be a manual deployment, but you can always change your mode also. So let me actually show you that. Pardon me. Just
You'll be sharing the screen or
no, I'll share this.
okay.
If you, yeah, here it is. So if you look at it, so I deployed a particular version, and then I wanted to. I have some configuration which I've added, and then mistakenly I made a different. Let's say I enabled last mile security, and then added some made some configuration changes. I deployed to point to worker and then apply changes. So it is going to deploy. It will add a new configuration. Okay, so what you can do in Cloudhub 2.0 is if you want to roll back to a previous configuration, then you can actually click on this. So here you can see last successful. This is the one last successful. This is the one desired. Desired means which is um, currently deploying. But if you want to move back to the previous configuration with all the other features, like you can just select the last successful one, so you can see that all the other configuration have changed, and then you can deploy. So this way you can actually move the entire configuration back, and again that will be a manual approach. It has some manual interventions anyway, but you can change the configuration itself to the back to the older one, which is again one of the good features from any point Cloud of 2.0. So not a Cloud of 1. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Please free. Okay. Okay, I think then we are good. So just okay. So that's so I don't have any closing slides as of now. Uh, yeah. So first of all, thank you so much, Push. Thank you so much for putting this slides, and it was great detail. As I said, it was very detailed, and then you tried to bring in all the most of the points, um, most of the differences from Cloud Up 2.0. Thank you so much. It was a great presentation.
And thank you, Anu, for giving me an opportunity as a speaker.
No worries, no worries. So folks, yeah. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you, Ravi.
So, folks, we'll stay back for a few more time. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, we are good. Yeah, the slides and the recordings of this particular session will be available in our Meetup page. So, I'll be uploading that by maybe tomorrow or by the latest Monday.